Starting recording. Here we go. Testing. There we go.
It's
Start.
official.
It's official. Hello, everyone in Bincast world. It's been a while since I posted, but I'm glad to be back. This is the Bincast where small talk comes to die. And Karla, that tag phrase there, my other sister had come up with, so I thought that was brilliant because that's kind of like my jam. But this is Karla, and she and I have just been acquainted over the last couple of days. And so I found her on TikTok, one of her videos that went viral in the last few days that she's just trying to keep up with because in life is just a whole different, a whole different experience. But I said I would love to connect with this girl. And girl, I'm so sorry. Is that?
I love it. That's one of my favorite terms of endearment.
Excellent. I'd like to connect. I think on one of my comments I wrote on your profile, I said, I think we're kindred spirits. So yes, I wanted to follow up and learn a little bit about your story. So my dear viewers, I have not had a chance to pre-interview her extensively. This is the point in which I'll get to know Karla a lot more alongside all of you. So thank you for watching. Karla, welcome to the Bincast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so wild and so much fun. And I do agree we seem like kindred spirits, and it's awesome to get to know you in this way.
I agree. Karla, it was one video that started our connection, and I think the connection for, would it be fair to say thousands of others?
Okay, just a little bit of context here. I am new to TikTok, and I have joined just for like the joy and excitement. I love the dance videos. I love the funny dog videos.
Yeah.
And yeah, I posted this video that it was like a response to one of those challenges that I'm learning is a thing on TikTok. And I just threw up some of my ideas and went camping out of cell phone range and came back. And it now has 170,000 views and like 22,000 comments. And like I thought I was just sort of yelling into the void about my perspectives. So yeah, it's been quite a wild ride. I came into TikTok with no intention of becoming a voice, and now here's all these people who are excited to hear from me, which is a wonderful opportunity. But like, wow.
You were mentioning something where you're saying TikTok was your arena where you came for fun, and you had other platforms for the more serious stuff. And it seems like you're being forced into a different mold now. How are you responding to this? Are you saying, no, I don't want to go down this track. This is my playground, not my serious ground. Or how is this evolving for you?
Yeah, it's interesting as a content creator. And I realize that TikTok likes you to like pick a niche and they sort of group you with people who are in that niche. And I have so many niches. Like I live and travel in a van. I'm a photographer. I'm a writer. I'm also chronically ill. So I came to TikTok unsure of whether I wanted to represent any of that there. And I chose really not to. Like you can tell I live in a van and there's some stuff on there about being sick, but for the most part, I'm just posting like silly videos of my dog and like doing silly dances. So that's been interesting. And for sure, I've created a lot of content around some of the harder parts of my life on other platforms. I have a video series on Facebook called Wednesdays with Karla. They go into a battle that I had with late stage Lyme disease. That was many years of being significantly disabled by a disease that isn't well supported or recognized in our modern medical system or our healthcare system. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of videos on there about what it's like to be isolated and what it's like to be disabled and what it's like to be fighting for your life. And so that's very serious content. And then Instagram has sort of been my personal journal as a woman who, after battling Lyme disease, which can be extremely expensive to get well from, I have had what I would call some bad financial luck for someone who has worked really hard in a lot of the traditional senses, like went to college, graduated with honors, have always been that like bootstrap kind of gal. I've fallen through a lot of cracks and as a result have found myself a little bit behind my peers if you were to like measure along a lot of capitalistic standards. And so I've gone on this wonderful adventure to sort of correct myself by moving into a van and living really low cost, adventurous, beautiful life. And so I talk about that on Instagram, but I talk about it very honestly. There's a lot of like van life is very hot and popular now. And so there's a lot of glamorization of this life on Instagram. And I talk more about what it's really like. And it's very high highs. Like the highs are real, but the lows are also very low. And so I write about that and what is that experience about? And I pair it with photos and post it on Instagram. And so people are used to hearing a more serious voice from me on these topics. And so here I come to Instagram, like this year has landed very heavily with me. Like I think it has for a lot of people. The isolation is, it's a lot, and living on my own and in a van during a pandemic has been like, I'm just craving some like joy and lightheartedness, and came to TikTok for that. And now here I am talking about what is it to be a deeply sensitive human being in the world who's carrying that intentionally. And I just like gurgled up these words in response to this challenge, that then this video went viral, and now people are like, oh my gosh, like what is that like? And I'm like, oh wow, like first of all, I didn't realize that was that rare. And like, I didn't realize that I had like that much of a unique perspective on how to do it. And so I never expected that message to catch on, but here I am talking about it, and I've posted so many videos since, and they've all been mostly widely like received with love and excitement, and people who are like so happy to have words around experiences that they're having or things that they're longing for. And that's so beautiful. And it's such an honor. And I wouldn't call it light or like necessarily playful, but it is full of joy and it's full of love. And I mostly just feel very honored and excited to have it, and was not the platform or message I was looking for, but especially in a time when we're all so isolated, I'm finding it to be very connecting. So it's not dance videos or silly dogs, but I'm also still trying to push myself to like still make that content that you would make for like, 6 follower account. Like I still want to make that content because I was feeling free on a platform that I didn't have any followers on. I was like, this is great. I'm no one to anyone. I can do whatever I want. And I want to maintain that. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens long term with TikTok, if that is a turnoff for people and if I develop different goals. But for right now, I just want to be me. And some of that's going to be just me being a dork and posting a video of it. And we'll just have to see how it goes.
Love it. Something that was just burning question for me was, what does it tell you about humanity that's responding to that one video that you probably didn't have insight into before? Well, was there any revelation where you're like, holy crap, I didn't think this was a big deal? But
I've had so many revelations, and I'm 100% sure that they're not done because the feedback just keeps coming in. And it's, wow, there's like, the responses are so incredible. Like there's a lot of categories of responses. The overwhelming majority, at least as far as I can see, I can't read every single comment. So like, here's meet Moo, my little buddy.
That's
he
awesome.
shares this home with me.
Yes.
But the vast majority of people seem to be saying like, yes, this resonates with me so much. This is something that I long for too. I'm so excited to have words around it. And that's the majority of people. And then there's a lot of people who are like, because the information was shared in the context of like a dating challenge. A lot of people were like, this is an unrealistic standard to set. And that's fascinating perspective. I didn't think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't think it is unrealistic. But I am gathering that someone who is deeply sensitive and also has cultivated the tools to carry that well, it might be more rare than I thought. And so that's actually really helpful for me, because I think that I've gone into, especially romantic relationships, but really relationships of any kind, thinking that the bar is here, that this is a default setting.
Mm-hmm.
And then feeling frustrated when people can't meet it. Because it's like, gosh, why is this? Like, for some reason, I thought, because of my own trauma and my own background and my own like kind of bad relationship patterns and attachment default settings, I thought I had been choosing people that were uniquely unable to connect with me. And so to know that the difficulty in connecting is actually kind of universal is really helpful for me to know, because then I can enter it differently. Like, okay, like this isn't a unique problem, and I can be more inviting and more compassionate and maybe more patient, and like there might be more that I can do as a human in the world to facilitate it, rather than to feel so frustrated that it's not happening because I think there's something wrong with me and my ability to choose other people to meet me in a space, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been fascinating. And then like another version of content that I've been getting in the form of comments is criticism, like deep criticism of like, why should we listen to you? And there's a lot of what I'm going to call superficial I don't know, commentary about who I am as a person. Like, why would we listen to somebody with face tattoos who lives in a van? And I'm like, yeah, don't listen to me. Like, I'm fully comfortable with the concept that I'm not for everybody, and my message isn't for everybody. And really, I'm not even giving advice. I have only ever talked about my experience and what works for me or doesn't work for me. And I think that there are people that will resonate with and people that won't. And like, take it or leave it. I'm getting a lot of practice in not attaching to the way I'm being received by other people. So that's like, it's all just so wild. There's so many layers of everything.
Thanks. No, that's like, I was thinking about how you're saying, I didn't think this is that out of the main vein, like your perspectives, right? I was thinking along from my perspective, the reason I think it resonates with those who really say, this is like the real stuff here that is meaningful. For a couple of reasons, I would say on one front, there are those who have gone through some hard experiences in their life, some hard experiences that have enabled them to gain insight, to be able to say, I have some expectations now, I have some boundaries that I am setting so that I can end up in a place that is really helpful, right? And then there are those who maybe haven't ever heard of this perspective before, but they're like, this sounds good and right. I just have never been open to this. And I'd say that latter category is the majority. The former category, from my experience, is the minority. Because honestly, as I look at our culture broadly, especially here in the Western world, there's a lot of desire, Karla, for that deep sense of connection, that deep what could be. Who doesn't have that? And yet to access it, there's a lot of hard work that entails seeing who we are first and being willing to work on ourselves in the first place, get the help that we need. And that takes a lot of scary work to actually look at oneself and say, crap, I got to walk through some valleys here on my own to be able to come to know who I am and grow through that experience to be able to have this expectation, right?
That's beautiful to hear you say that, and it's validating and it inspires hope in me. And it's great. And like, I am seeing some of that in my comments where people are like, yeah, I'm working on this, but like, I'm not ready, I'm not ready to be seen, or like whatever. And it's like, oh my gosh, what a human thing that I can relate to. Like, that's even for people just to say that, I find so inspiring. Like, this is not the type of journey where you're like, I'm done now, I'm fully baked and I can come out in the world and take my mask off. Like, no way. The work is in taking off your mask at any step along the way. And some of that's you're gonna feel more ready for it than not. Like, I feel very ready to show whoever, myself pretty readily now. But I probably wasn't there in my mid-20s, like 10 years ago.
Yeah, I totally hear you. Additionally, I was also thinking about how that evolution happens. So for example, there are others who are in this camp who are like, this is really rich and good, but they had to get to this point. And here you are saying, I didn't think this was a big deal, these ideas, and all of a sudden you're blowing up because all of a sudden people are like, here's someone who's speaking in a way that we can understand this, right? This is not your plan. You didn't choreograph this whole sequence here. It was just like,
that's a perfect description.
Give my audience some background into how you even got to this place. We're having a very intuitive conversation here that is accessible for those who have ears to hear. Not to make this religious, but the Bible has some analogies that says those who have ears to hear are able to hear, right? And it's that selective process of saying, I know when I'm listening to the good stuff versus things I'm not interested. What was the evolution in your own experience in life that brought you to start saying, these things are important for me and I'm going to start valuing and implementing these perspectives?
That's such a good question. And it's part of this has been hard for me because, and I even referenced this in one of my videos, like, I feel like I'm a fish trying to remember how to describe the water, Like I went on this, I vividly remember going on a journey of like self-improvement, deciding something needs to change in my life. And that was 11 years ago now. And so this stuff has become kind of second nature to me and become just a normal way of living and talking. And so it's interesting trying to remember what are the concepts, like how did I get here, what were the books that I read, what were the things, because people are asking and I'm like, I want to help, like I want to I want to get you guys on a path that set me free, in case it is, if this is the message for your ears at this moment. But I guess a little bit about how I got there. We had your standard 80s upbringing, maybe with a little extra, I'm going to say emotionally not great upbringing, which I actually think was really common in the 80s. Like it was sort of a time when people weren't particularly mindful about how they were raising their kids, or we weren't talking about a lot of this stuff. And I come from a family that is unfortunately very plagued by addiction. And so some people listening will be familiar with like the framework of an alcoholic household and what that entails. And mine fit that perfectly, which meant that there was a lot of secret keeping. There was a lot of, scary big events that would happen, and we wouldn't talk about any of them. There was no joint emotional processing or reassuring or any of that. You were just sort of like, as long as you're alive and breathing, then we're doing fine. And so I went through life thinking I'm fine, I'm normal, I'm healthy, I'm good. And went to college. I did move out at an early age and became independent on my own at an early age. I was 17 and put myself through school, worked the whole time. Had, I bought a house in my 20s. I had kind of like a normal quote life, and was like, I'm great, I'm doing good, until I fell in love. My first really big love. Mm-hmm. And at that time there was other strife going on in life, but I'm a twin, and my twin sister was going deeper into an addiction that really scared me. Mm-hmm. And so I was in a new-ish relationship, and this horrible trauma was happening in my life, and I don't think that I knew how to carry it. And what came out instead was a lot of anxious attachment, what I now know is called anxious attachment problems, where like I became very needy with my partner and very like unsure of his commitment to me. And he played a role in that too, because he is a classic, what I would now know as an avoidant attachment type. And so we had this terrible push-pull dynamic where you're doing it, like he would bail and I would chase, and then I would give up and he would come back, and it was so bad for both of us. Mm-hmm. And objectively, I could look at it logically and be like, this is terrible. And why are we doing this? And be confused. But then emotionally, I couldn't seem to stop myself from taking this behavior that didn't feel value aligned with who I was as a person. And so that was when I really woke up to like something's off. And I think I went, my partner was like, you should go to therapy because you're an anxious mess. And I was like, yes, something's wrong with me. I'm going to therapy. And so I went to therapy for the first time, and it was a process, but like waking up to all of these dynamics at play, and really more broadly, waking up to the fact that like, wow, there is so much that I haven't developed in myself, and I am not doing a good job of stewarding myself through life. So I want to build these skills so that I don't end up repeating this kind of thing forever, or like being quite so autopilot to my reactions, feelings, thoughts, attachment styles, etc. And so that's really when I woke up to it. So that relationship was terrible for both of us, and I'm at the same time so grateful that it brought me so much clarity. And I hear he's off and engaged and happy and doing well, and so I'm so glad that he seems to have ended up in a good place, and I've definitely ended up in a good place. And so there you go. And I've sort of been answering that call ever since, and looking for more ways to carry this sensitive heart and this difficult set of programmings in my brain in a way that keeps me value aligned with my actions and value aligned with how I spend my hours and days and energy.
How old were you about when you went for that first therapy session?
I am of the age that I now have to do math to remember like where I was in my life. I was probably 26 or 27.
Okay.
So that was 10 years ago. I'm 37 now.
Okay. How quickly did you see the work that was before you?
That's a really good question. I wish I could remember it accurately. At first it was like, I'm just coping with being an anxious person and my partner's perfect. And why am I having such a hard time? And so that was like, first it was like just a generalized anxiety thing. And then it was like, well, hey, what's your family history? And what is the dynamics of this relationship really like? And so I'm going to say that it was probably because I changed therapists like 2 or 3 years in. And by the time I went to my second therapist, I was able to give like a fairly accurate assessment of like, hey, I have abandonment stuff. I have this anxious attachment. I'm not very in touch with my feelings. It's hard for me to hang on to myself when I'm in the presence of other people. But then like the revelations just keep coming because there's been long breaks from therapy, but I routinely go back into self-practice. And my current therapist, even just this last summer, so like we're talking about 10 years later, we started talking about the fact that I am a twin, and I'm a twin who's estranged from her twin. And just the mere fact that being a twin can change the way that you prefer to be in the world. And what is that like? Like, there are times in this journey when someone might have referred to my behaviors as codependent. And that's been a little hard for me because it's also preference. Like I have a preference for orbiting with other human beings. And I'm an introvert, so I want that other human being group to be very small so that it's like, manageable for me. And if you think about that, if you're born a twin, like you literally come into the world in a womb co-regulating with another thing. Like all of your skin, all of everything is pushed up against another thing. Like I am wired in a way that is meant to be co-regulating closely with another person. And so there's this balance of like, yes, I don't want to be codependent. I don't want to be anxiously attached, but like, I also want to honor this preference in me to be closely collaborated with somebody else and to orbit with somebody else. And that's an okay thing to want. And that's an okay thing to own. We have a very American culture of like, you need to be independent. You need to be on your own. We really value like people living as islands. And I don't want to value that. I want to value connectedness. So it's like the layers are always there. It's just a matter of like, how many do you want to work through and at what pace?
You mentioned something else in your video I was watching recently, and that was that it's not that life gets easier, but something shifts in the way you see yourself going through life. Can you just expand that a little bit more? Because that speaks to the process of growing you're still going through. It's not like peaches and cream right now, but it's something else.
Yeah. I mean, the circumstances of life, I have come to believe are they will always provide obstacle and opportunity. And so I think that there's always some notion that like, oh, I'm going to do this thing and then I'll be healed, or I'm going to do this thing and then life is going to be easy and it's all going to be great. And after being at it a while, I'm now of the perspective that doesn't happen. Life will always give you opportunity to feel challenged, to feel triggered, to feel loss, grief, difficulty, immense joy. Like it's going to give you all these rich experiences, and you get to figure out, how do I carry it well? And so for me, a lot of that is witnessing being human. Like we have so many thoughts and so many feelings that just sort of enter our minds and enter our spirit and move us. And I think that unless you've stopped to do a little work on this, you might believe everything you think and feel, which can lead to a lot of suffering. Because you can think things and feel things that are really overwhelming. Like you can have really negative self-thoughts. You can have really, really fearful thoughts about what life is going to be like. I've had a lot of practice with that, being a person who lives with multiple chronic illnesses. It would be easy to be overwhelmed by fear all the time, or overwhelmed by grief or loss all the time. And instead, I've created this separation between myself and my thoughts and my feelings so that I can witness it and hold space for it. But like, I always use the phrase, like, don't forward your mail. Like, that's not where you're going to live now. Like, this is not a permanent thing. It's like, it's more like weather, where you're like witnessing a mood, or you're witnessing a thing come over you, or a thought, and then spending time with it and getting to know it. But like, you're not marrying it. Like, then you let it go. And so what I'll say is like, life hasn't gotten easier, but I don't suffer with it because I've I've developed this ability to witness it more and marvel at it. Like sometimes I'll be in the worst, most terrible experiences and be like, wow, this is super bad. Like I feel incredible loss, or I feel incredible fear, and look at how big this is. And there's part of me that stepped back from it enough that I'm not worried about it. It's more like, gosh, being human is so wild.
Cool. You're mentioning past generations and the limitations that past generations have had, perhaps because of they didn't have as easy access as we do to resources for one, but even as you look at your family dysfunction that you kind of went through, what point did you notice or say to yourself, it doesn't seem to be the best dynamic here, or it's not reflective of what could be?
It's tough to say because so much of those years were lived in survival mode, and in a young brain where there's really not a lot of opportunity for reflection. And I think even if I'd had the brain I have now as an adult, because it was so survival mode-y, I'm not sure that I could have checked into that type of reflection. So I'm going to say that really that wasn't until those first therapy sessions, when I was looking at how much I was suffering with my own reactions and thoughts and attachments, that I was like, oh, this is actually not, like, I was not set up to handle this well. And I've been told my whole life that I'm sensitive, which is true, but it was used sort of as a weaponized, you're so sensitive and you should stop doing that. And what I did learn in those early years in therapy was like, I am really sensitive and I need to learn how to be okay with that. And since I've developed a real appreciation for it, but you gotta figure out how to live with a big sobbing wet heart.
What would you say to my viewers who are in that setting, who are still maybe living at home in an environment that doesn't lend to their health emotionally or mentally? What would you say to them as they're trying to survive or cope?
The feeling overwhelming me right now is like, I just want to go give everybody a big hug. Cause like, that's such a hard space to live in. It's such a hard space to live in. And I don't know that there's much advice that can free you in that moment, especially if you're young and you're dependent on your parents and you're like, there's or in any way are like unable to go out and be independent. All I can say is go ahead and be in survival mode. Like, full permission granted. You don't have to do any self-actualization. You don't have to do any work. You don't have to do anything except for survive and get yourself on a path that will open up this possibility for you. And whatever that means for you, that's just like waiting until you're older. Like, I deliberately chose to go to school far away from my family so that I had to move, I had to be on my own. And, there's choices you can maybe make to like get yourself on that path where then there will be space. But I'm a big believer that when you are experiencing trauma or difficulty or overwhelm, it's okay to just be overwhelmed and not expect yourself to also process it in real time. That's something I'm still not good at, and I still get lots of practice, and some of it's just surviving.
Awesome. I want to bring up a paradox, Karla. So the paradox. Think with me this one here. This is the one I'm hearing, and you're still in progress, you're still growing, you're still enjoying life while you're growing through painful things, and yet you're talking about a freedom. So help me understand there.
I am of the opinion that if you want to be, you will always be growing. Everyone will always be in progress. There is no end.
Sure.
And so, but the freedom is in that, for me, is in that detachment of not suffering with emotions, not suffering with reactions, not suffering, believing everything that I feel. And so that's the freedom that I'm talking about, is the freedom to witness. And so, like, I have a dumb story, but like, when I was sick with Lyme disease, I was sick for many years, like, and to the point where I really was not doing any socializing. I was kind of stuck at home, had a very restrictive diet and lifestyle. And as I started to get well from that, I like went out on a night on the town with friends. We went and sang karaoke. And at the end of the night, we went to go pay our tab, and the debit card machine at the place was broken. So we had to go across the street to get cash, and the ATM was broken. So then we walked a couple more blocks, and that ATM was broken. And like, all of us are like, what the heck? We're so, we're getting so frustrated. And I was getting very frustrated in like an inflammatory kind of way. And one of my friends was like, how can you possibly be upset about this after everything that you've been through? And I was like, that's exactly why I'm enjoying being upset about this. Like, what an incredible joy to get to be so livid about an ATM machine. And it's just like, I got to choose, I got to be discerning about what part of the human experience was I going to go for. And
Yeah.
as this like frustration rose up in me, I was like, yeah, I'm going to ride that wave. Cause like, how fun to get to ride that wave. But like at the same time, I'm sort of stepped back from it, not taking myself too seriously. Like, this is not a frustration that I'm going to live in or move home to. Like, this is just something I'm going to enjoy for the moment, because sometimes it's great being human, and humans can be reactionary and ridiculous and upset about stupid crap. And I loved it.
So here's what I'm hearing. You're saying that freedom encompasses the ability to see yourself from a third person view, saying, hey, here's what's going on as I'm going through it. And to be able to, while you're acknowledging that this is going on, enjoy that process, whether it's highs up here or lows down here, you're just kind of being present in that moment.
Yeah, I think so. And it's not so detached that I feel like a different person or anything, but it's definitely like there's the heart-centered Karla, and then there's like the human reaction Karla, and I get to sort of move between those as I choose to. I should develop like actual words for that, because that's a helpful distinction, I think. But the two levels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that. I was thinking about how, in my frame of reference, I would think of the word freedom now because being actualized, because I'm very open with what once wasn't accessible to me anymore, or once upon a time. So once upon a time, I was very much governed by societal expectations, and here's what I'm supposed to be saying, here's what I'm supposed to be doing to be able to fit into this societal community, and me being a social creature, I want to please others and so on. But now being able to say, I am actually open now to be able to express and say what's on the inside without frame of reference or fear of what people's thoughts are going to be, and say, here's what my truth is, and here's how I can express it freely. And as I try to fumble my way, figure my way out going forward.
I love that. And that's something that I recognize in other people, like this concept of should, this like shoulding all over themselves. Like, I gotta should over here, and I gotta should do this, and I should do that, and like freeing themselves from that is so
Mm-hmm.
powerful. So I think it's a very close similarity. Like, I
Yeah.
am lucky that I grew up in a very quirky and artistic home. And so I think that I didn't have a lot of those shoulds. Like, I got to be like whatever little weirdo I wanted to be from the beginning, and that's great.
Yeah.
But my shoulds came in the form of not societal expectations, but like, what do I have to do to be safe? What do I have to do to be safe? And a lot of times what it took to be safe was not having any of my own emotional experience, but like reacting to the experiences of those around me who were maybe more volatile or dangerous. And so I developed this ability to like take on the emotions of people around me. And so I didn't develop the habit of inhabiting myself and taking good care of myself. And so that's what came on later.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited that I didn't have to shed societal expectations. Those were sort of shed from the beginning. So I think it's interesting. You and I are sort of coming at it from different angles.
Yeah. You have experiences I don't think I can relate to, but I love listening to them. Like, wow. You mentioned you're an introvert who does appreciate her time alone as well for replenishing. As you're approaching powers beyond your control that are forcing you into the limelight, how are you calibrating with implementing what you need to keep in that zone of safety?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And like, also, I didn't know I was an introvert. This was part of my process of discovering myself. I always thought I was extroverted because I was very tied up in like socializing and all this, and I wasn't realizing how much of that I was doing as a band-aid. And so it wasn't until I really slowed down and got to know myself better that I'm like, wow, I'm quite depleted by like a lot of socialization, and it's important for me to schedule in like a lot of alone time so that I can kind of come down. Or alone time for me, being that person who likes to orbit with close people, might be like me and a best friend, or like me and a partner if I'm in a relationship, to like, that's my alone time. It doesn't have to be me out in the middle of nowhere. But in terms of like the incredible honor of what's happening on TikTok and all the people who are suddenly interested in hearing what I have to say and creating boundaries around that, it's something that I'm sort of actively thinking about. We're lucky and unlucky right now, being that we're in a pandemic. And I have quite a lot of alone time. Like, it's me and the dog in the van. So like, as difficult as it's been to be alone in this and depressing in a lot of ways, there is also the benefit of like, I am not often overtaxed as an introvert in kind of an extrovert's world. So I'm able to kind of give freely the TikTok world or whatever, and not feel too much of an overtax. But like, you and I are going to have this conversation for a little while today, and I'm made sure that my evening is quiet and doing things that I like to do and doing things that are sort of mindful, and out of my head and out of my voice, so that I can get to recoup from that. So it's just being, just creating a little space for what you think you might need, which you only know when you get to know yourself well enough to say like, wow, I really am an introvert and I really do need this downtime after. Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about how this experience might be changing you?
Yes, very much. I mean, the timing of this is very interesting. I'm a very intentional human being, and I'm kind of on this journey of life transformation right now, like living in the van, creating this financial freedom in the future, being that I am chronically ill. I have multiple sclerosis. One of my medications is $500,000 a year. So like, it's very hard for me. I have this desire to be a creator, an artist, a writer, and I have the need to be employed in a way that gets me healthcare. So part of living in the van right now is to create some financial abundance in a way that lets me make some decisions down the line to change the way that I do that. So like maybe go into more of this soul calling stuff that I have, and have enough money to buy my own insurance for a year, let's say. So that's kind of the journey that I'm on. And only just recently, because I'm coming up on, it's been 15 months of living in the van. And so I'm like, okay, when does that leap happen? Am I closer to it? Just sort of doing some self-evaluation. And I've been really spending some quiet time and like deliberate meditation on what is the purpose and what do I want to do with this creative energy and this heart of mine, and like, what do I really want to do? And there's definitely part of me that like wants to write a book. That's been a calling for a really long time. And I have like a coach now who's like a novel coach or like a memoir coach, and trying to like figure out what do I want to write, and what is my timeline for that, and what is the process for that. And I'm also a photographer, so like, how do I capture some stuff to go with that? And then recording this TikTok thing and realizing that like, wow, people are really craving this kind of connection, and they're craving this kind of information. And like, here I am trying to like get this story out of me in a way that's meaningful. And then here's an audience. Like, hi guys, and so the timing of it is really interesting. And it's, if you believe in anything divine or in the universe kind of showing up for you when you make space for it, I believe that I make space, and that space now is showing up with some possibility. And so I'm really excited about that. And it's, it's great. It's so nice. So it's definitely going to change me. I don't have it all figured out yet, but I'm here. I'm receptive. I'm excited to be part of it.
So when the world comes to you and says, you're good at this, we want more of this, how do you figure out which track you want to go down?
I pay a lot of attention to what is energizing me at the time. So like, there have been whole years of my life where all I have talked about is the experience of being sick or being chronically ill. And that was my calling at that time. I believe that I created some breadcrumbs. There's a blog, there's that video series. It's all out there. And like, for people are still referencing that today to help themselves get well, or to just feel less alone. And I think that's beautiful. That's also not what I'm being called to create right now. And people will occasionally ping me with questions or ask me to be part of something. And I just have to pay attention to what's that gut? Like, is it like, yeah, I want to do this? Or like, no, it's really not where I'm at right now. Or like, the van life stuff, people want to know what it's like to live in a van. And lots of people are hopping into vans and taking on this thing. And it's like, I'll answer questions, but like, again, I'm not feeling excited about that. If someone had asked me 3 years ago, I would spend a whole weekend talking to you about how to live in a van. And now it's like, yeah, I'll do it, but like, it's not where my heart's at.
Yeah.
But you asked me to have this conversation, and I'm like, yes, that is absolutely how I want to spend, an hour on my Friday afternoon. Like, this is where I'm at right now. I'm so excited about this. And so it's just paying attention to your own inner cues, and not letting any shoulds get in the way, and just follow that energy.
Yeah. I'm relating in some way along the following lines. I think my rise came because I was the Uber driver that everyone's like, oh, this is fascinating. Let's listen. And so my calling is not Uber for life. But I figured that whether it's Uber or all my previous jobs that I've done in the past, the thing that really brings me that sense of aliveness is the way I connect with other people. And so like, it's just been this constant golden cord right through the whole string of occupations that I've done, which continues to show itself consistently. And so presently what I'm doing right now, I'm doing Uber, and yet it's an excuse to do what I feel my calling is, you know? And so I resonate with what you're saying there.
That's a perfect analogy. It's just like, I know that my calling, and I took a strengths finder thing at one time, and they like distilled what is your calling into one. They a million exercises distill you into like one sentence, and mine was like, I live in service of others in helping connect them with paths to achieve goals that they've already set for themselves. So like, I'm not trying to sell anyone on anything. I'm never trying to like advise people on what they should do. I feel like that's up to them. But if somebody says, hey, I want to do this, and look at you're doing it, like I intrinsically want to help. And that used to be healthcare stuff, and that used to be van stuff, and like now maybe it's more of this emotional connection stuff. But like, I for sure see myself as the facilitator of like, let me show up with some space that I'm holding for you. Let me show up with some words that I think might work for you. Let me show up like with a mirror and say like, what do you think about this? And that's my calling. And I fully believe that will shift multiple times. But what an exciting thing to see how many places it goes. Just like you, I'm sure that's taken you many places, and I'm sure it will take you to many more places. Like, what an incredible gift.
Indeed. I was thinking about just from what I've seen over the past few days about you were focused on fun, and then all of a sudden this thing comes unexpectedly. And the part that gives me greatest encouragement from how I see people responding to what you're presenting now is that they're locking in on the good stuff. They're like, whether it's good or bad, and we'll talk about the bad responses in just a moment. But I find that really encouraging that people are being drawn towards this stuff that adds value to our lives in really integral ways. In my experience, I think the biggest surprise that I found, Karla, is who it was that was following. Like the majority of my followers, I would say, are young guys. I was blown away. See, I saw your face.
Guys, that makes me so happy.
Why does that make you happy?
I mean, okay, so I'm a big bleeding heart, sensitive kid going through the world. And I get to carry that a little easier because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
And I have been like, even though I haven't been told I'm too sensitive my whole life, that message would be so much stronger if I had been born a boy. I'm a radical feminist. I know that people get very upset about that wording, but I hate the demonization of feminine qualities. I hate that they're even assigned to femininity. I want the full spectrum of human emotions to be available to everyone, and men should be able to experience all of it without all this shame and role expectations. And like, just, can we please throw all of that in the garbage and just let everyone be a human and be sensitive or not sensitive, or like in touch or not in touch, and just let us all be humans without the labels, without the shame, without the guilt. Like, shame, if you could ask me what thing do I hate the most in the world, it's shame, because it shuts people down from complete self-expression. And that's especially true for men. And so I say I'm a radical feminist, and guys get pissed, and I'm like, no, it's for you. Like, you deserve this. You deserve to get to feel your whole heart out loud if you want to, and be well received in that. It makes me crazy. So I'm so glad that they're following you, and that's happening. And I hope that happens on my page too, because I'm here for you guys and for the women, because we all deserve that.
Yeah. Well, you actually jumped to my conclusion, and I'm just fascinated how you got to my conclusion. Honestly, here's the part that I would say, for my part, I thought I was intuitive. in my perception of society at large. So the shocking factor for me in an encouraging way was that it's young guys that are predominantly the ones who are following and actively engaged and responding to and participating along with the things that I'm representing, because I don't see myself as that paragon image of what masculinity currently is, even though I'm very intentional in saying, no, here's the track that I'm going down and advocating for. So I found that really encouraging. And why I bring that up in the first place is more so to say, I am so thrilled that even as they're responding to this kind of content that I'm putting out there and doing so in a very engaged way, that's the same thing that actually exploded you. You didn't explode because of Moo, as delightful as Moo is. You exploded because of other reasons that are funneling opportunities for you to talk about the stuff that resonates deeply and strongly with your heart.
Clearly, it's like can't help yelling about it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. No, I'm encouraging it. Let's talk about the criticism. More, yeah, then let me put it in a question.
I mean, we can also just talk about it. Like as I said, TikTok is new to me. The whole notion that you can just blow up overnight and suddenly have thousands of people weighing in on how relevant you are it's just a fascinating position to be in. I have an Instagram following, but nothing like the numbers that are here on TikTok. And so anytime that there's a large, like I have the good fortune of like I'm a writer, I work in marketing, I see numbers all the time. And so I know that when you increase your reach, you increase engagement of all kinds, both negative and positive. And I'm so grateful that so much of it is so beautifully positive. And when you go viral on TikTok, there's always people who are going to show up with criticism and show up with projection and show up with why the heck should we listen to you? And I've never had that experience before. I've been mildly successful on other platforms, but I've never hit it like this. And I think especially because I was talking about some gendered stuff in an area where probably some folks feel some shame, it came out. But it didn't come out as like, hey, you're making me feel shame. It came out as like, why the heck would we listen to you? You live in a van, you're homeless, you have face tattoos. Like, what? You're clearly a loser. Like, oh my gosh. It's a new world to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially because I like the way you put it before. You said, I'm deeply sensitive intentionally. I think that's how I wrote it down. Anyway, you're deeply sensitive intentionally. You're pursuing this track of being aware about what's going on inside yourself and being able to express that in a way that's true to yourself, and also asking and requiring those that you're in community with to do the same, because that's the healthy melding of community, right?
For sure. And I would say that I am deeply sensitive in a way that I can't help. And the intentionality is around trying to figure out how to carry it well, because I think I tried not to be sensitive as a child, and it turns out you can't just turn that off. So you just have to figure out how to survive.
And for my part, I'm trying to make, from a guy's perspective, that sensitivity, which is very, I guess it's obvious because I think you also saw it too. It's very obvious from my part. I can't hide it as well. But my intention is to make it normalized. I'm normalizing it again and saying, no, this is appropriate. This is legitimate. But more to the point, and that is, I would say that's part of the cost, it seems, for putting ourselves out there, right? Putting ourselves out there that maybe a lot of people don't factor in, because they're like, ouch, we always seem to aim for the best case scenario here. If everything goes just according to plan, this is how it's going to play out. But the reality is, we are going to get that kickback in a royal way, because people are going to be very candid. And even as you're mentioning and saying, they may have their own stuff that they're really dealing with, but the way that they're processing is projection on elsewhere, so they don't have to focus on the internal, right?
Yeah.
What are you learning in your response to criticism about how it challenges the way you see yourself, and how you are, I guess, speaking to yourself and saying, here's where I'm going to focus on, even though this is what I'm being accused of or labeled as, or yeah.
I mean, it's interesting. It's just practicing discernment of like, here's a comment that I care about, and here's a comment that I am going to let roll off my back. And it's being careful not to absorb the messages that I feel like are not for me. So if somebody is saying like, hey, we don't trust you because you live in a van and have tattoos, like, okay, don't trust me. That message is not for me. That's a message for you. Like if I'm not a person you trust, scroll on by. Like I will not take that personally. There's nothing special about me, and I'm just talking about my experience. And if you're not the ears for that message, then great. We know that. Carry on. And I wish that you hadn't left that terrible comment, but like I understand that you felt like you needed to. And I just leave it at that. I did get some criticism around a couple of things that I said in that viral video, not being super, I was being accused of being ableist, which of course is someone who's experienced significant disability is not a thing that I want to do at all, or to exclude anyone at all. And so I did do a correction video on that. So like, here's where that was a misstep. And here's also where I was maybe a little misunderstood, because I said, you know, when's the last time you read a book, being a conversation starter for me. And people took that viral list that I made as a pass fail. Like if you don't answer every question correctly, you fail my quiz on whether or not you're a person who has their shit together. And that's not how I take it at all. Like, that's not how I think about those things that I listed. I think about those things as like areas of exploration. And if somebody said to me like, hey, I haven't read a book in 3 years because I'm really struggling with this like mental health thing that makes it hard for me to focus, or like, also I just like, maybe I have a vision impairment, like that would not be a fail situation for me. That would be like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that with me. I feel honored to have gotten that perspective. And so I just had to like, TikTok is an imperfect platform. You have 1 minute, like you're trying to like get all this information out. And most of the time these are not scripts I'm reading from. These are not things that I wrote. This is me just talking into my phone in response to a prompt. And so I used lazy language. And so that's an example of some criticism that I took to heart and thought about and you know, came back and like said, you guys are right, and here's what I think about it. So it's just being discerning in those comments that are negative of like, is this for me or is it not for me? The hey, you weren't super aware here was criticism that was for me. And the hey, you're a loser in a van with tattoos is like, that's not for me. Okay, that's fine.
Nice.
But it takes work. It's not, you know, it's not easy to wake up in the morning and be told that like you're ugly and you can't be trusted. Like, okay.
We got about 5 or just a little over 5 minutes left. I have a hard question for you and an easy question. Which would you like to start off with?
Oh, let's do the hard one.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Karla, who are you? What is your identity all about? If you were to sum it up, this is Karla. What?
Oh man, that is a hard question. I don't know if I'm going to do that justice on the fly. I am just, I mean, like my cynical brain is like, I'm nobody. Like I'm just another you. Like I'm just another person out here, a little tentacle of the universe, experiencing my little part of it and trying to make meaning out of that and trying to make connection out of that, but also realizing that at the end of the day, it's not really that serious. Like I'm also just sort of here and then I won't be, you know, and so it's just about, I don't know, how do you make the most of that time, and how do you honor that opportunity and show up for it as much as you can, and then also let it go when it goes. I'm just a little tentacle.
And then if I can add on to your answer, I think you are everything. And I'd suggest that for the following reason. I like what you're saying. I'm just like another expression of you, a fellow human being. And I think our existence is of such, Karla, where we are entering into this participation of existence that brings to fruition our essence of growing as human beings, trying to figure a way forward, kind of thing. In which case, all of us are on that same page, but it's on that plane that I resonate the strongest to say, even if we disagree, even if we're not in good company or whatever, the fact that our humanity does tie us and align us in such a way to say, I want you to have fullest expression of that sense of freedom that you want to bring to others. I wrote this down. You said something like, you wanted to set me free of desire for others. Yeah, so you've experienced this freedom that you're like, I would love for others to experience that. I've seen your passion in that too. And so there's something beautiful in that expression of our existence that says, I'd like this for my other fellow human beings to be able to walk where injustices are, that they would be alleviated, where oppressions are existing, like all these elements. How can we grow in our awareness so that we're experiencing our own happiness, but then we're also making it conducive for others to be able to access theirs in ways that are healing and meaningful. And yeah, so that's
Yeah. You nailed it. I think I resonate equally with I am no one and I am everyone. Like but what I'm saying is there's nothing special about me that's any more special than anyone else. So yeah, I love the way that you're putting that. You can put me on either end of the spectrum and I'm like, yep, that's true.
Sure. Yeah. Favorite color?
It's actually harder than you think. Like, I am covered in color. Big fan of color. But the first thing that came to mind when you said that, I really love like a bubblegum pink and like a neon yellow. Like I'm really into the real bright happies.
You hit me right there. Okay. So mine is neon yellow. Oh my goodness. The brighter Oh, seriously, I'm telling the truth. My favorite color is yellow, like neon yellow. My second favorite color is lime green.
Oh, that's a good one.
Lime green. Okay. So those are the two I know for sure. My favorite food is watermelon. What's yours?
Actually, it's funny because I don't like watermelon and I feel like this is a divisive topic. Like I'm like, I don't like watermelon and people lose their minds.
Oh, no. It's all right. You'll be happy company for me because I don't share with you then. And I do that.
More for you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say peanut butter. If it's got peanut butter, I love it. Like,
over chocolate. Over chocolate.
I mean, ideally mixed with chocolate, but like
That's
I have to choose. I'm in it for the peanut butter.
Karla, thank you for this time. I am going to continue messaging and trying to look for ways to connect because I do enjoy, I think, what you stand for. And I'm very pleased to bring you or introduce you to my audience and to even expand your reach further that way. Where can my followers find you? What platforms? How can they follow your work?
I mean, I'm under the name Orions_charge on pretty much everything. So I Instagram and TikTok are the two places where I am. That's it so far. And any updates on future stuff, like if that book is coming to fruition and when it comes out, like that, these are the channels where I'm sure I will talk about it. But I got a lot of work to do, so just come along for the ride.
Nice. Any last question for me?
I want to say thank you. This has been such an energizing and fun conversation to have with you. And I'm just so glad that, we crossed paths. It's clear that we share some common purpose and that we've come at it from different angles. And I just think that, what an amazing opportunity that came out of this. So I'm just so happy to know you. And thanks for having me. This has been fun.
It's my pleasure, Karla. Happy Friday. Enjoy your new pad in Seattle.
Portland, Oregon.
Thank you. That was my second guess.
I'm from Seattle, though, so you're not wrong.
That's right. Okay. Portland, Oregon.
Yeah.
All right. Much love to you, Karla. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you. Bye. Bye.